Live from Washington, D.C., it's the Pay Dirt Football Show.
Are you trying to give me the double talk?
You talk too much.
And now, sit back and listen to 2 hours of biased, brainless blithering sure to drop your sports IQ by at least 20 points.
7 years of college down the drain.
Pay Dirt is on the air.
All right, welcome everyone to actually the PSAFL edition of the Pay Dirt Football Show. We will probably touch on the PAFL a little bit there towards the end of the show. The show's going to be about 35 minutes long, and we're going to start deep and heavy into the PSAFL. So we're going to turn this over to Calvin and let him go at it. Go ahead, Calvin.
So I'll do what I do at work. I'll delegate. This is the Joe show. Joe's going to do his predictions, so there's no need for me to interject too much here.
Well, I would like to hear because I haven't heard yet what your thoughts are on any of these, or if you're thinking like, what the heck was he thinking type of thing. So
okay, so I may chime in on this. I don't chime in on game predictions. I'm pretty vanilla. Like my Super Bowl write-up was vanilla. I don't like tipping people what I would do. But for predictions, I'll speak a little more. I'll try.
All right.
I don't want to get anybody mad at me. Sean will get mad and put my face up. And
one more thing. Joe, the screen is yours. So whatever you want on the screen, you just put it up there.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, this was my attempt to figure out, and this is because this is my first full season. I kind of joined in the PSAFL last year midstream, and so I was like, okay, this is actually a good exercise to get a chance to go look at everybody's roster and to see if where everybody stood. And it was definitely an enlightening exercise because I got to go check out everybody's team. And I'll start off with saying because I basically will talk about them as far as in the order in which I wrote them up, and I just kind of started from left to right, or up to down, top to bottom, and then left to right. So AFC East was where I started, and right off the bat, I will sit there and say our good friend Bob from the Colts over in the PAFL. I was looking at his team, and I definitely think he's got a Super Bowl contender. He basically checks marks all the boxes. He's got a top-notch quarterback in Josh Allen. He's got Derrick Henry at running back. He's got Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. So you've got three of the top guys at their positions. Decent offensive line, not a great, but decent. And then a trademark of one of his teams is that he's somewhat decent on the defensive line, and on this team, unlike the team he had in the PAFL, he has a really good secondary. So I can see Buffalo doing very. I don't see any other team in this division beating him as far as on that. And then the next few teams I thought could very well be almost interchangeable. But I think they're all maybe a little bit of a step down. The Colts, they sat there, little step down as far as with quarterback with Garoppolo. But and then not as many carries as you'd like. Jonathan Taylor is a top-notch back, but he just didn't have the durability last year. So they're probably going to have a little bit of durability issues at the running back position. Not as deep at the wide receiver, and but a very good offensive line. And then on defense, they're pretty good. They're not great, but pretty good. And but then secondary is they got two top corners, and they actually kind of, you can say, as far as the six, a nice nickel with a really good free safety as far as in Simmons, and then Joseph as their other safety. Then third, I went ahead, had the Patriots, and on this one here, and again, the quality of the quarterback kind of went down as you go along. They got Daniel Jones, who had a decent year last year, and he's got a decent backup in Jason Stidham, but he's not going to wow anybody when compared to Josh Allen. And then At running back, got kind of running back by committee. Wide receiver they've got Jacoby Myers. Nobody, but there's not really. There's a lot of youth there, but there's not a lot of top end talent. And then good, pretty decent offensive line. Defense is good, but not deep. And then decent linebackers, and the secondary is average to a little bit above average. So I want to stop right there. I'm going to let Calvin jump in here and see if he's got anything he wants to say.
I've gone against Bob even in basketball leagues, so I agree. Buffalo is strong, the team to beat. Indianapolis, I don't know, if Jimmy G was healthy, I think he's pretty close to Josh Allen in some ways. Again, so I'm doing this off the top of my head. I don't have the game up, but I remember Garoppolo, I thought was like 67%. So, and I've enjoyed chatting with Dustin quite a bit. Dustin not in the PAFL. So that's kind of fun to meet new people, talk to new people. And New England, Brian Macri, if I'm pronouncing his name right. Like you say, could be a bit of a rebuild. I think Daniel Jones had a resurgence last year, though, so it could be, that's pretty fun. And overall, I think, and maybe you would agree when you were picking this, I think it might be harder to pick than the PAFL. I think there's better balance in the PASFL. I might be wrong because it's, relatively new league, but we will see. So I don't have any big qualms here, Joe. I think it's pretty straightforward. If Bob wasn't to win, he would be having a Carr issue. And for those that don't know, he had Derek Carr last year in the PAFL. And he pulled out his hair because Derek Carr was very bad. So we'll see. But my money would be on Bob going far in the playoffs too.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I put it this way. I had 4 teams in my mind that I said, these are the real Super Bowl contenders. I thought that they could, that none of the four teams that I have in mind would shock me if they made it to the Super Bowl. And then there's obviously, I mean, we saw it this past, in the last few weeks in the PAFL. You get to the dance, anything can happen. Nobody would have predicted Arizona to, much less me, to go to the Super Bowl. And yet, I had 3 improbable games in a row to get there, and anybody can do that regardless of the league. So just because you end up with a 15-2 or a 16-1 record is not going to guarantee that you're going to make it to the Super Bowl. So then again, you could also win the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So and then at 4th, I had Miami. And again, there's not a ton of difference between these teams. But they had Tua. They have Tua as far as their starting quarterback. So I mean, again, player management will be the key there, because obviously he's going to miss some games. But he definitely is one of the higher rated quarterbacks last year. And then they got 2,000-yard rushers in Jamal Williams and I don't know how you pronounce that, Ramondre.
Yeah, I guess so.
Stevenson, yeah. And then they both have Stevenson has 69. He's an 8 as far as receptions goes. And then as far as that wide receiver, they've got 2 top receivers in Christian Kirk and Jalen Waddle, and their offensive line. They're 2/5 of their offensive line is definitely above average. The rest of it is below average. And so it's a good thing they've got those good running backs, because they're going to have to do a lot of the work on their own. On defense, they've got a couple good pieces there. The rest are, they're going to be average in there, but and then linebacker, looking at it, they've got some quality linebackers, but again, they've got a lot of guys that are going to have some durability issues on there. And then likewise at secondary, they've got a number 1, a number 2 but they're not going to be able to hang with the big boys. Hufanga is their top secondary guy as far as its safety, but they'll be in contention to with the others. I mean, again, I don't think you'd be shocked if any of these teams amongst the bottom four make it to second. I mean, you can jumble them around.
Agree, and Pod's a solid coach. So.
Yeah. And then New England, and again they've got.
You mean Tennessee?
Or Tennessee. I'm sorry. Yeah, Tennessee. Clicking the wrong box. Yeah, Tennessee. Now they're going to have quarterback issues with Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson, so they're maybe a step behind there, but they have a solid running back in Aaron Jones, wide receivers, AJ Brown. So in other words, they're kind of like what you would say that Buffalo has, except for the fact they're just kind of like a step below them on each one of those main guys. A little, very a good quality O-line. And then some really good talent there on the D line as well as at linebacker. So their front seven is really pretty good. They've got they definitely have one of the deepest inside linebackers. I'm assuming they're going to probably run a 3-4, and then at corner, they're very ordinary at the corner, a little and very suitable there at the safety position. So. It's probably the lack of top end corners is why I took them down a notch, but they have a very good front seven. So they may, I think that as far as, especially in a division where you've got a team you're going to face twice, it's going to have 2,000-yard rushers coming at you. Having a solid front seven is going to be helpful. So
agree.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to mix those up, that's certainly understandable. But I honestly think that you've got one team that's at the top, and then the other four will be competing for. And it wouldn't shock me if because just simply because it all depends on how badly, if one of these teams manages to take a good majority, because I could see a second team coming out of this division as far as being a playoff team. But that also being said, I think the Central will have at least 2 representatives, if not 3. So, but all right, next division, AFC Central. And I put the top team in there to be the Cleveland Browns. They were in the Super Bowl last year, and and plus he's defending champion as far as in the PSAFL. So Sean knows how to coach a team. He knows how to build a team. And,
well, anybody can hand off the ball to Nick Chubb, makes your life easy. It makes everybody's life easier. Chubb is a machine, but in these salary cap leagues, he has mediocre quarterbacks, but you can win with mediocre quarterbacks in this league in action.
Yeah, I mean he's got plenty of attempts, and I mean they're mediocre, but they're high mediocre, if that makes sense. I mean, in other words, they're not, they're not some, he's not sitting there like Ken last year in the PSAFL with Baker Mayfield. No,
I mean last year he won with I don't know, I call him Heineke.
Yeah.
He went to the Super Bowl with him. So in that vein, I mean they're mediocre, but I mean they're good enough, 60-some%. And everybody's worried about Chubb. And when you're key on Chubb, he's going to throw the chase. So,
yeah, and the one nice thing about having 2 guys like this, and because I've developed this theory that there is there's a number that's rolled behind the scenes that basically determines before the game ever starts what kind of game your quarterback's going to have. Well, if you have 2 guys that are nearly the same, that gives you twice the chance of having a decent number rolled. And so, in other words, if you go midway through the first quarter and you just see a lot of bad throws, and the game will kind of tell you, it's like, boy, Taylor Heineke's not having a good game today. Well, he has somebody to go to. Besides that, if Geno Smith is not having a good game, I'm stuck with Geno Smith. But
That's right.
but he's got a choice, and then he's got maybe the best offensive line in the league, and he's got again, I mean, there's not really a place where he's weak. The only weakness you would say, if there is any, is the fact he's doing the grand experiment where he's sitting there with where a third of his team is 500K or less as far as the salaries. And he made a mention of that on Slack where they took a little bit of he saw some guys with 10 durabilities miss a good portion of the game and stuff. So I don't know if that's the game fighting back or if that was just a bad day or what, but regardless.
Yeah, they will get fatigued, like you mentioned. One long drive, and he'll see guys start dropping out. And when you replace them with threes, it can make a difference.
Right. And so, I mean, but that being said, I mean, regardless of what kind of fatigue issues he may end up having, he's still going to he's going to the playoffs, and and he definitely is going to be a contender for a Super Bowl. He's going to be he's the second team that I thought could definitely do it. And then second, I'm patting myself on the back here, Baltimore. We and I went about it a little differently than what Sean did, in the sense that I just couldn't just put all threes. Now I'm going to end up doing that in the PAFL, but I ended up replacing my second guys are a little bit higher up, but then again, that means that there's more dollars on the field when Sean's out there. So it'll be an interesting dichotomy. But Gino, he had. I was actually kind of looking. I mean, the difference in the numbers between him and Joe Burrow last year are not that great. They're on par with each other.
Right.
And then running back. Let's face it. Strength of this team is going to be at running back. The wide receivers, I've got two guys that are good in terms of a tight end and at one wide receiver. Where my Achilles heel is going to be is getting that third wide receiver. I don't have a second wide, so there's going to be it's going to cost me a game or two, without a doubt. And then solid across the offensive line. I feel like defense. Got solid player, but in particular Quinnen Williams, but not to the level that Cleveland's got. Same thing with linebacker. I think we're pretty similar, but where the strength of the team lies is in secondary. So hopefully we'll be able to keep them held down there. Yep. And then again, I think that I got a squad that should be able to compete for a Super Bowl. Third, I think if you took Cincinnati and you stuck them in the East, I think they would be in second place. I think they've got a very solid team. The only reason they're third is because of the top two teams in this division. Joe Burrow's their quarterback, and then again he's got a top, Miles Sanders as his running back, and with a good yard per carry. He's got a solid wide receiving core and a good offensive line as well. Defensive line. I mean, again, these are things that Pierce does very, very well. He's got a good linebacking core, and so I mean, they're basically you could quibble a little bit that his second corner isn't as good, and his top corner is probably going to miss some games, but when you have a front seven that's as good as he's got, you can, generally speaking, you can absorb some of that. So
yeah, Cincinnati could easily win it too. I mean, it just depends. Burrow, it's obviously Burrow, but it's tough. I see why you put him third, but it's pretty razor thin there.
And not to mention the fact, I mean, Pierce is as good a coach as there is. So and again, just because I like the way his team is built up. And then Pittsburgh fourth, I felt really bad because, again, I think Pittsburgh would be competing, and I think I made a comment in the in the article. It's like I when these team divisions got set up, I noticed that Pittsburgh was in the Central, but Tennessee is in the East. Now, if you mix those two teams up, I'm probably picking Pittsburgh to be second in the East. But they're have them last here. But Brendan's got a good team as well. His biggest flaw is going to be a quarterback, because out of the 4 teams, he's Davis Mills is not on par with the other 3, but he does have Tyler Algier. He's got a good rushing attack. He's got some good. He's good 3 deep at wide receiver. Decent offensive line, and on defensive line, he's got 2 studs in Cam Hayward and Micah Parsons, and so and then also he's got T.J. Watt, though and he's going to have durability issues and stuff like that, as well as Alex Singleton. And then at secondary, he's got a shutdown corner, and he's got maybe best safety in the game in Minka Fitzpatrick. So again, you wouldn't be shocked to see Pittsburgh stealing some games there. And if somebody, Nostradamus came out of the woodwork and said that the 3 other playoff teams besides the division winner all came from the Central, the only thing that would prevent that is probably the Central teams beating each other up.
Yeah, they'd have to be pristine on games outside of the division, meaning win them all, basically.
Well, the only thing that makes that even a feasible thought is because it's a 4-team division. So that's 6 of the team. So you have 11 games outside the division. Mm-hmm. So if you go 7-4, or 8-3 outside the division, and again, I don't have Pittsburgh's schedule right in front of me, but if they can go 7-4 or 8-3, and then they manage to go even 2-4, that's 9 wins. So
Pittsburgh should have the same exact schedule as Cleveland, because 1 and 4 that they finished 1 and 4 play the same schedule basically. So and they were 4th last year, had to be, and then Cleveland was 1st, and then you guys in the middle, you and Cincinnati have the same schedule as far as. Again, we added an extra game. So the first game that we added is definitely different. But for example, 1st and 4th place, both of y'all will play, I should say, Cleveland and Pittsburgh will play the 1st and 4th. Will play the 1st and 4th place finishers out of the AFC. And 2nd and 3rds, you and Cincy will play the 2nd and 3rd out of the NFC East and West.
Okay. So, yeah, it wouldn't. Like I said, it wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. But I mean, again, you would like to think that somebody in the East, and the only reason I even bring that up is because I think that the 4 teams in the East, besides Buffalo, are going to beat each other up. Mm-hmm. So it all depends on how bad that happens. But
yep.
And then in the West, This to me, this was a 2-team race. I have Kansas City on top. Why? Because they got the top stars. I mean, when you've got Mahomes, when you've got Tyreek Hill, when you got Travis Kelce, when you've got Chris Jones, those are all guys who are going to wow you and catch your attention. But as I wrote up in the article, I sat there and I said, keep your eyes out on the Chargers, because the Chargers overall have a team that I think is more balanced. For instance, I think their offensive line is better. When you look at the depth as far as across the defensive line, yes, they got Chris Jones in Kansas City, but if you look at the Chargers, the Chargers, they have every bit as much talent along the front 7, and I think they, Eric is just going to be with glee the fact that he has a real quarterback in this league, and so it wouldn't shock me to see the Chargers. It's going to depend on those 2 on those 2 head-to-heads, whether or not Eric can pull off the win.
Yeah, I agree. This is a 2-horse race by a pretty wide margin.
Right. And then, the next three teams, I don't see them making the playoffs, but had Houston third.
And Rudy's taken over a mess there, so he's
taken over a mess. But I've coached with and against him in other leagues and stuff like that. Rudy knows how to put together a team, and so I don't think this rebuilding process is going to linger too long. But he's got some good pieces there, and but I mean, again, he's going to have to do what Ken did last year, and that's make between Ken, Baker Mayfield and Ken Pickett, and again, he's got a couple good wide receivers. So Rondale Moore obviously didn't play a lot of games. He missed half the season, so he's going to have to maneuver through that. Offensive line's not that bad, and then I think I said in the thing, in the write-up, the word of the day for Ken's going to be 6 because he's got a lot of 6s across the board. So, which isn't bad, but it's pretty average, and you can't win a division. I kind of likened him to what in the PSAFL what you had in Kansas City or San Francisco. I mean, where San Francisco, they won the games they're supposed to win, they lost games they were supposed to lose, won a couple games that were a little shocked by, and if they ended up winning 8-9 games, scratch at a playoff spot, possibly, maybe, but more than likely not. So, and then the Raiders, they're definitely going to be more close to competing, I think, with Houston than they are with the Jaguars. The Jaguars are definitely the team that's going to have the biggest rebuild to do. Mm-hmm. But again, I've coached with in a league with Butch before, and Butch knows what he's doing, and his biggest issue is going to be at quarterback. I mean, if anything, he's got more problems at quarterback than what Rudy does in Cooper Rush, Mike White, and Jameis Winston. So, but he does have a stud at running back, and he's got a couple targets, none of which are going to blow you away. But he does have a really good O-line, decent D-line, and so the front 7 will be fine. But then his secondary is going to look a lot like Houston's. And then finally, the Jags, they're a rebuild.
Yeah, I appreciate Jason taking them over.
Yeah, I mean, but you can tell he thinks the same thing too, because he's trying to do it the right way. He's trying to get draft picks. Mm-hmm. But the Super Bowl representative from the AFC and the PSAFL is there, and Ryan Tannehill, and the running backs they're a little rough. You gotta like Drake London. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the other guys that are on the offensive line is average. Definitely maybe the weakest as far as on the defensive front 7, and then secondary. They're young, but hopefully they'll improve. So,
agree.
So. But yeah, if you were going to sit there and make a prediction as far as on that, I think that Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Cleveland, I think those 3 teams are pretty sure as far as to get into the playoffs. I like Kansas City and the Chargers to battle it out. It wouldn't shock me if one of the team that loses still makes the playoffs, in which case then you're talking about a battle between Cincinnati and
probably an AFC East team.
Yeah, an AFC East team. So, all right. So anyway, now to the NFC East. We got the Packers. I had first, and that to me, that's the 4th team. I personally think they're the best team as far as in the NFC. They from top to bottom. I mean, they're sitting there with Aaron Rodgers, 1,000-yard rusher plus another 700-yard rusher. They got 2 very good wide receivers and a tight end. good O-line. I mean, there's really not that much in the way of weakness. Daryl's got himself a really good team there. And I would think you have to pencil them as the favorite as far as in the NFC. And then I got Len second, and I thought Len and Andy are going to be close to one another. The reason I gave Dallas the edge is that let me go through it like this. They got Dak, and so with Dak Prescott, as far as in Dallas, you know that they're going to lose some games because of the fact Dak's going to be out for some. But all in all, they've got a lot of carries at running back. They've got good, solid wide receivers. Len again has a great offensive line, and this year, as far as in the PSAFL, he's got a decent defensive line, and you can basically just say a front seven, and then a good, but not great secondary, but definitely some of the better safeties. Where Andy's going to fall short a little bit, I think, is yes, he's got Tom Brady, but I don't know if this is not Brady's greatest year.
Correct.
And it just, to me, I thought, he's got some really good wide receivers, good stuff, and I think this is going to be a team that's going to compete for a playoff spot. I just thought he was just a little bit behind, and I like his D line really, really well, but I think the thing is that the other secondary, that five at corner, I don't know if you can win a division having a weak. I mean, if you can't get exploited, that's a bad place to get exploited. That, and Cameron Curl's going to miss some games as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Giants, I honestly think that next year's where they're going to shine, because Deshaun Watson, he's going to take him a little bit, and then Murray. They'll get the chance to decide who they're going to have as far as their starter. They've got Barkley at quarter running back. Little weak at the wide receiver. Pretty decent O line, and on the D line, again, Ken, he's really good as far as on his defense, and just a little shy at safety. But could he sneak in there and get into the top three? He could. He might slip past Andy or Dallas, especially depending on when Dallas loses Prescott, or how much he can take advantage of the matchup as far as the secondary against Andy. But all in all, I think that the Giants are going to probably finish behind those two. And then I cringed making a Maine last in the division. That just but I just think that Rick's got a little bit of a rebuild to do here.
Yes, he does. He does. That doesn't ring true to Ricky last, but I think he finished last in an AFC last season, so it can happen. He's just, again, the quarterback's the problem, right? He's got Zach Wilson, if I remember right.
Well, he's got Mariota, Purdy, and then he's got Taysom Hill. But the thing is, he doesn't have a running back that's got over 60 carries, and so he's not going to be able to do very much on the run. His receivers are good, but then again, if you don't have guys who can toss you the ball, but he does have two good safeties, and he does have one good corner, but the front seven is average, a little bit average, and so teams will be able to run on them.
So Len, what do you want to do here? You want to break and come back, because we only got like minute 50?
What, do you all need to do more? So it's all going to depend on that.
Yeah, we got two more divisions.
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll pause here, and we'll get reconnected.
Good, and we'll talk before we go live.
Okay. All right, and we are back with the second portion of this show. So we're going to put this right back over to Joe, who is going to finish out these predictions. Joe, it's all yours, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and now we're on the NFC Central, and this is probably where I feel really bad because I know Calvin was counting on not winning and not making the playoffs.
Not true. Not true.
Oh, well, I mean,
you're supposed to start with this. This is the weakest division in the PSAFL for the third season running. So, and I resemble that comment. So, no, I didn't take Derek Carr to roll over. So, but again, carry on.
Oh, I was going to say, it's like, and mind you, in no way, shape, or form was I inferring that you would ever intentionally lose. But that being said, I think you're probably a season ahead of where you would projected yourself to be. But I have you winning the division.
And by the way, I didn't take it as I would be deliberately losing games. It's just, it's a pretty easy division to win. Anybody can win it, but go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it's Derek Carr. I mean, is he sitting around there planning his offensive player of the year speech? I hope not. But I mean, he is a average to a little bit above average quarterback. And last year wasn't one of his better years, but I think in the long run, I think he'll do fine.
And that's the scary part with Bob would agree with. He had trouble with a better vintage of Carr than I'm using this year.
Oh,
so we'll see.
I've had Derek Carr in other leagues, and I love Derek Carr usually because he has usually a very good completion percentage. And quite honestly, I think that the game engine favors guys who have a high completion percentage. And
he's 60, if I'm remembering right. So he's in the lower quarter of the quarterback. 60 is like
he's 2 seasons removed from when he was like 69%. I mean,
right.
And that Derek Carr cooked. But that being said, 60% not the greatest. But then again, I don't think that the division's dominated by great quarterback talent.
Lawrence would be a good.
Lawrence, yeah, that would be it. And then, but then you've got Najee Harris. Again, not a great yards per carry guy, but he's got a lot of carries. And then Dalvin, or James Cook. I almost said Dalvin. All right. Yeah. I'm sure they talk about that at the dinner table.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you got decent carries, good running back, and then you've got one of my favorite wide receivers in Chris Godwin. You got 2 good tight ends, and stuff. So you got targets for those guys. And again, typical of a Calvin team, you got a good O line, and then the D line.
Not so good.
Better
than I started with, but not great.
Yeah, I mean, they say 6s are average, but if everybody's got them, then I don't know if you call them average or above average. But now, and again, you're starting to develop a reputation, Calvin, of having a good secondary. You've got 2 solid, and then Lattimore will be, even though he's going to have some durability issues, if you massage the lineup the right way, you'll have 3 around playoff time, and then you got Kyler Gordon as your quarterback, so to speak, and then 2, one of the better safeties in the league in Derwin and Javon.
That's an understatement. One of the best safety, Derwin would say.
Ooh, I'm not going to quite put him ahead of Mika, but yeah, I know it. Yeah, Derwin would probably agree with you there.
You can put him second. That's
fine. And then Disco being your third safety. I mean, not shabby. So I mean, yeah. So I have you winning the division. Then I have New Orleans finishing second, and again, it wouldn't be crazy if they ended up coming in there and winning. I mean, they do have Lawrence, and stuff. So I mean, obviously, they've got the top quarterback, and then Alvin Kamara, and the ageless Latavius Murray. I mean, you can't go wrong there. They don't have quite the targets you have as far as on the at the wide receiver and the tight end. And again, they're they got good tackles, so that'll help. But middle of their offensive line could use a little bit of help. But their defensive line's a little bit better than their front seven's a little bit better. But I think you've got a better secondary. So, and I'm a secondary type of guy, but Tim knows how to coach. So, those head-to-heads will be important to see who wins this division. And but then I had Carolina third, and wouldn't shock me again. See, Carolina. The thing is that it's going to really depend because this is probably the weakest division in the PSAFL. But then you guys do play, you play against each other. So
Somebody has to win.
somebody has to win. I mean, I was getting visions of the in the PAFL, the AFC West.
I think Carolina last year was like 8-7-1. That was like our division champ. And I think when the first year I was maybe 9-7. This is just not that strong of a division.
But they do have Mac Jones, which I mean, again, I'm sure that Jerry's probably got bigger hopes and wishes for Jones than what Belichick has. And then he's got one of the best dual backs as far as Christian McCaffrey has some, and again, depends on how he manages this. But DeAndre Hopkins is a 10 at wide receiver. And if he turns around and he does make the postseason, if he massages to where he's around, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have, Hopkins, Moore, and Curtis Samuel out there along with Everett as far as at your skill positions. Very, just down the road average, but then again, there's nothing wrong with having it. You gotta give up something. And he's very average on the offensive line. Defensive line, he's got some really good talented guys in Brian Burns and Derek Brown. So and then linebackers are pretty good as well. Though this is the thing I thought that was odd is that when I first was looking at it, I was going, wow, 2 7s and an 8, but they're all at inside linebacker. So somebody's, and then you go to his outside linebacker, it's like he has a 6, and then he's got a bunch of 4s. So, and I don't consider the problem with Jeremy Chin. It's the same thing that happens with Isaiah Simmons, which is the fact that you look at the first number, you think, oh, that's really great. But what you really got is you've got a crappy run stuffer and you got a crappy safety. But
you got a good linebacker for covering running backs.
That's yeah. But I'd much rather have a safety who's a safety and can cover the same running. But that's just me. But and then at corner, they again average and stuff like that. So in other words, I don't think all in all, I don't know if they're in on par to match up with you. But then again, they're going to be in the game. So I don't see anybody running away with this division. And then finally, the Bears. They're Justin Fields is going to be he put it this way. I think he's got a nice setup as far as with Flacco being his backup. You would like to have seen like last year's Flacco instead of this year's Flacco as far as the second, but at least you got somebody there who had some attempts and stuff like that. But when you got 1,100 yards sitting there in the backfield, say right next to David Montgomery, that's you're going to move the ball. And then they've got some decent depth at wide receiver, and not maybe the top end talent take things away. But this is the thing. It's like, their offensive line, it's okay. But if you're going to rely on the running game, you'd like to see a little more oomph there. And then on the front seven on D, their star player is Hassan Reddick. And then secondary wise, they're actually halfway decent. That Woolen's you can basically give him the title of a shutdown corner and stuff. So Chicago, I mean, again, if any one of these 4 teams ends up winning the division, if they get on a bit of a run, it wouldn't shock me. But I honestly think you probably are a little bit better set overall to win the division. So.
A collection of mediocrity from the NFC Central.
Well, well, you know what though? I mean, and then when you go to the NFC West, it's not exactly like they blow you away either. I mean, all in all, and again, I'll probably have daggers thrown my way. I think more talent resides in the AFC than in the NFC. That's just my general impression. But you have last year, but now you get the last first two Super Bowl winners were from the NFC West. So, what do I know? And Kenny, he won the Super Bowl last year, and he did it with Jared Goff. He inspired me to go get Goff in the PAFL. So,
and that was with mediocre golf. This is 100 QBR golf.
Goff actually, and hopefully he'll even be better this year when Jameson Williams actually quits gambling. So, but he's got a good quarterback. He's got sufficient carries at running back, and then when you've got the best, one of the best wide receivers out there in Cooper Kupp. But then again, he's only going to be around for about half the season. So, but Kenny's really good at massaging use. And if you're in this division and in this conference and you got a lot of games, you can afford to let him sit there and take some time off and massage his thighs. And then he's also but now you get past Kupp. I mean, you got Robert Woods and who else? And then very, very ordinary at the offensive line and on the defensive line. No, he's got Aaron Donald, but again, Aaron Donald who only played 11 games. So again, he's going to have to massage that usage as well. And then, but now he's good at linebacker. I mean, the back seven is pretty decent. He's got Jalen Ramsey, so he does have a shutdown corner, and he's got depth at the safety position as well. So, is he going to win the division? I think he very well could. Do I think he's as dominant as his team as he was last year? I think the other pieces were better last year than what they are this year. So, and then I have the 49ers second. They've got this year's version of Jalen Hurts, which I'm sure you're going to be excited to get to.
Yes.
I mean, it's like having a Lamar Jackson who has a good QBR. So that's maybe not quite the rushing threat of a Lamar Jackson, but then again, and what I like about San Francisco too is that it's not like Colt McCoy is a bad backup. So in other words, you need to fill in some, for those games that you don't want to sit there and throw Hurts out there and you want to save some attempts. You got a guy who can at least do so. And then, you'd like to see a few more carries, but the carries they got, Jeff Wilson, pretty good yards per carry. Decent tool, weapons there in the second, as far as in skill position, and he definitely has his tackles set. Though the middle of his offensive line could really use a little bit of brushing up, and then he's got the defensive player of the year in Nick Bosa, so he's going to pressure the quarterback. He's also got Fred Warner in the middle, so it's going to be fun trying to run against him. And then he's got a shutdown corner in Darius Slay. So if you tell me San Francisco comes back and they manage to win this division, wouldn't shock me. I've just learned I'm never to pick against Kenny. So yeah. Yeah, that never works out for me when I do that. And then Minnesota, the first year's champion, I have Lawrence. They're sitting there. Kirk Cousins, he nobody ever gives him any respect, but this last year was probably one of his worst years to date. He's right on par actually with Heineke and Brissett. So I mean, it's not that much difference. But then he's got the other Cook, the guy who actually gets to purchased the turkey for Thanksgiving dinner in Dalvin. And then, what I consider probably top wide receiver in the league, as far as in Justin Jefferson. And then, he's got two other guys who can, Thielen and Irv Smith will sit there and will be nice secondary targets. And then offensive line, when he started off this offseason, I thought I didn't see how Lawrence was even going to put together an offensive line, but he did. He did over the offseason. So he's halfway decent at O-line. Defensive line, basically fairly mediocre, but then his linebacking core is good, and then he's got some good talent there as far as in the secondary, but doesn't have the shutdown corners that the first two teams have. So that's the reason why I had him just a notch below. And then Detroit, they're sitting there with Eric's favorite player, Matthew Stafford. Or no, he had Matt Ryan. I'm sorry. Yes. I don't know why I always confuse those two guys. I think they've had similar careers. And I think I even wrote in the article, it said if I was Detroit, I would let Stafford sit there and hold a clipboard, and I'd start Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton actually had a better year. And they got James Conner, running back. Again, and I think it's a consistent theme in this division where they've got some decent running backs, but they're not going to get to run the ball as much as they'd like because they just don't have the carries on the roster. Wide receiver at the their top receiving threat is Hawkinson at tight end, and a good above average offensive line. Defensive line's pretty decent, but I mean, average to decent. And again, I can't see anything really that, I think that they're going to represent okay, but I don't know if they're going to shut down the better teams in the league. And then finally, I had my buddy
Mr.
Don.
Merlin mock has to go to the end of the show.
I first off, Don would be very upset if I didn't mention the uniform change that they have, so that way they'll always be able to be seen from the stands, even up in the nosebleeds. But as I told Don, it's like him and I made the trade earlier where he got Lamar, and I think Lamar Jackson, now that he's got his contract, for some reason I have a feeling he's going to magically start feeling better, and so he won't miss as many games. But Don obviously took advantage of the bidding process, got himself a good running back in Travis Etienne, and then I wish I had his top two wide receivers in Devontae Smith and DJ Metcalf, but and then his O-line. One thing about the consistent theme, they're young, but I think there's some quality there. And then on the front seven, as I wrote in the article, it's like, you sit there and you look at his front seven and you kind of cringe because it's not as good maybe as some of the other teams in the division. But that being said, if you look at the ages of the guys, they're all just going to get better. And then, of course, he's got then his shutdown corner and Patrick Surtain, AJ Terrell in the long run. He had a down year, but the year before that, he was the best corner in the league. And then he's got Jamal Adams, who hopefully will come back. And stuff like that. So he's got a lot of talent along that team, but I just don't think he's got quite the horses to push up and compete with the other four teams. So your thoughts, sir?
So playoffs NFC. One team out of the Central at best.
I put it this way. My thought is that you've got the Green Bay is the one you can pretty much write in pen. I think that you're going to have Dallas and Washington competing for at least one spot. one of those two teams for sure is going to probably make the playoffs. Also, I think that Seattle and Los Angeles make the playoffs. Or not Seattle,
San Francisco.
San Francisco. The Los Angeles and San Francisco, is going to make the playoffs. And then, so that's 2 from the West. I think at least 2 from the East, 1 from the Central, whoever wins. And then I think that you've got
Minnesota and maybe Washington or Dallas, whoever falls out.
And then, I don't necessarily know if, if you end up winning that division in the Central, does New Orleans, does their schedule friendly enough to allow them to win? Because I don't think they have the roster that competes with Washington and Dallas. And again, the Giants too. They could come up and surprise and stuff. But I honestly think that you kind of got whoever finishes in the top 2 in the East, and then you got Washington, maybe New York, and you have also, like I said, San Francisco, maybe Minnesota.
All I got to say, I'm sure people are tired about talking about the NFC Central. We play the AFC Central this first week, and we could go over. So we'll see. I got to play Cincinnati, so that's not a good matchup.
I play Chicago tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. And but yeah, I mean, I like to think that I think that the playoff races will probably be more exciting in the NFC, if it means anything, because I think this will be one where I think there's a lot more teams that are level on the same playing field, and coaching and matchups and depending on who's injured and who's not and who manages the rosters the best is going to be the ones that are going to decide which teams sneak in there for that 5th and 6th final playoff spots.
Yep, key break here or there.
So
yeah.
Thoughts, Len?
I think y'all pretty much covered it.
Well, I have you second, Len.
I saw that. I saw that. We'll see. I don't know that you mentioned that I didn't really have too many holes, but I know that I do have a few holes. So
he has a tight end hole.
Yeah, I do. But I've got some good receivers to take care of that. But
well, my biggest thing with you is that it's like you're going to lose Dak. When are you going to lose him?
Well, and that's the strategy I have to figure out for the season. I have to.
When he plays the NFC Central,
yeah,
whatever the matchup is.
I'm thinking I want to lose him. I want to lose him during the season, but not when I have to play a good team or a game that I have to win. So it's going to be tricky to try to get him injured at the right time. So we'll see.
Y'all play, if my memory's right, y'all play the. So this first week you're playing the AFC East, if I remember right.
I'm playing Indianapolis this week.
Yeah. What I can't remember is what division in the other conference you'll play all of them. So, because we rotate every 3 years, and I don't know that off the top of my head. I know it for the PAFL because I just did the schedule, but I don't remember who y'all get.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to sit down and look at that schedule, decide who I want to put as an emergency player here and there, and what games I want Dak to sit out, because if I set him out too much, then I run the risk of getting a late season into the playoffs injury. I can't have that. So, but I don't. If I start him and just play him, he's going to get injured somewhere around week 6.
Well, I'll put it this way, Len. I'm sitting here looking at your schedule right now, and I'm going, for some queer oddity in this schedule, you play the main division competition in terms of Washington and Green Bay, all in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And stuff, and as well as so you basically, it wouldn't hurt if Dak accidentally hung a toenail and you wanted to set him down. If you took some losses early, even if it cost you a game.
Well, here's the problem. If I set him down early and let him play in the latter half of the season, he's going to probably get injured in the playoffs. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I can lose a game here and there during the regular season, But if he goes down in the playoffs, I'll be a wild card and done.
So seeing that you're looking at the schedule, do you see the Chargers or do you see Cleveland? Dallas has to play one of those divisions.
It plays Cleveland week 10.
So you're not going to like this, Lynn. That means you run against the whole AFC Central. So all of those teams should be there, Joe. You should see Cleveland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I play.
That's a tough row. You got a tough row.
It is,
there.
but I mean, if I'm gonna lose to a team, I hope it's AFC teams.
Yeah. So you could rest Dak.
Yeah, I
for
could.
those, or that's your measuring rod. That's those are some of the toughest teams. Like Joe's saying, the AFC is quite tough.
Yep.
In weeks 5 he plays Baltimore, and then week 6 he plays Pittsburgh, and then
not having a good backup. I mean, that backup he's serviceable, but in the playoffs he can't be my quarterback in the playoffs. I've got to figure that out.
Nope, you just gotta manage.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, so like I said, I think that's going to be the key thing. I mean, in many ways, I think the NFC is going to be more interesting to watch because I think you've got a lot of teams that are much more even. I mean, like I said, it would be a major upset to not see Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo, Baltimore, and Cleveland in the playoffs. And then I honestly like Cincinnati a lot. And so if you end up going that, and then with whoever wins the West, I mean, that only leaves 1 or 2 spots at most that are available to be had. Whereas in the NFC, I think you've got Green Bay, but then everybody else, it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. And I think if you turn around and you get some good coaching in there, make some good decisions, have opportune injuries against, on the teams that you're playing, anything could happen. So I think it'll be a fun ride.
Looking at Daryl Richards is Green Bay, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a good coach too.
Yes, he is.
All right, guys, is there anything else, or are we get ready to wrap up?
We're ready to wrap.
All right, man. Yeah. Good show. I'm going to have to listen to a lot of it on the replay, but it sounded like it was going to be a good show to me. So anyway, this is going up on the replay. As soon as I get done here, I'll start uploading it, guys, so people will be able to listen to it.
I mean, why would you want to go to Myrtle Beach when you can listen to this?
There you go. Exactly. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Care.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Take care.
Yes, sir. Indeed.
That's all, folks.